Serbia's neighbors closed airspace to Russian foreign minister's aircraft, spokesperson says. Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova told an Italian broadcaster Sunday that some of Serbia's neighboring countries have closed their airspace to the plane scheduled to take Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov to Belgrade for a meeting with officials on Monday, according to Russia's state news agency TASS. The countries bordering Serbia have closed the only air route to the aircraft of Sergei Lavrov, who was to depart for Serbia. The Russian delegation was scheduled to hold talks in Belgrade, while the EU and NATO member countries have closed their airspace, Zakharova said in an on-air broadcast of Italy's Law 7 television. Russian ambassador to Bulgaria Eleonora Mitrofanova said that Bulgarian authorities refused to provide an air corridor for the Russian government aircraft, according to TASS. I can confirm that the Bulgarian authorities did not allow the flight of the plane with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on board, which should proceed to Serbia, through the airspace of their country, she said. Zelensky says he visited troops on Luhansk-Donetsk frontline Sunday. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said he visited troops in some of the most heavily bombarded frontline positions Sunday. In his nightly address, Zelensky said, "We were in Lysychansk and we were in Solidar. Both places have been under heavy Russian attack for weeks, suffering missile, rocket and aerial bombardment. I am proud of everyone I met, shook hands with, communicated with and supported. Something was brought for the military, but I will not detail it," he said. "And I brought something from them, to you. It is important, confidence and strength." Earlier Sunday, Zelensky was in the southern city of Zaporizhia, where he said had met the mayors of some occupied towns. "I met with Mariupol residents who managed to leave the city alive and with children. I met them in Korditsia. Conditions are temporary but not bad," he said. "Each family had its own story, most without men. Someone's husband went to war, someone in captivity, and someone, unfortunately, died." Russians suffer losses in renewed offensive against Slavyansk, Ukrainian military says. The Ukrainian military has reported another day of heavy fighting in the Donetsk region, especially on the northern approaches to the key city of Slavyansk. The Armed Forces General Staff did not acknowledge losing any territory but said Russian troops had resumed their offensive near Sviatohorsk, some 12 miles, 20 kilometers, north of Slavyansk, and had suffered losses. It said there had been further airstrikes against Slavyansk. The city is located more than 300 miles east of the capital Kyiv. Further east, the General Staff said Russian forces had tried to storm two districts, Bilohorivka and Mykolaiivka, that, if lost by the Ukrainians, would put the city of Severodonetsk at risk of encirclement. The enemy suffered significant losses in manpower and equipment, the military said. Local authorities reported the town of Bakhmut, a linchpin in Ukraine's defense of Donetsk and Luhansk, had been shelled again. An agricultural machinery plant had been set on fire, they said. Fighting in the south continues, with territory changing hands since a Ukrainian counteroffensive began a week ago. The General Staff said the Russians were conducting an offensive in the area of Bielokranitsia in the north of the Kherson region, a district recently retaken by Ukrainian forces. The head of the regional military administration, Alexandra Vilkul, said Russian units had retreated to previously occupied positions. A grain storage silo was destroyed in the city of Mykolaiv, according to images from the area geolocated by CNN. The operational command south of the Ukrainian forces said from the direction of the Black Sea and from the territory of Russia, the Black Sea coast of Mykolaiv region, ports and granaries were attacked by air-based cruise missiles. Zelensky pays tribute to filmmaker killed by Russian forces in Mariupol. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky paid tribute Sunday to Lithuanian filmmaker Mantas Kvedaravičius, who was killed by Russian forces in Mariupol in April. Zelensky made his remarks in a taped address to the guests and participants attending the Lithuanian National Film Awards, Sidabrine Gurv, in the Lithuanian capital, Vilnius. It is important to bear the truth. It is important to support art that is for life, not for those who want to destroy that life, Zelensky said Sunday. Ukrainians will remember Mantas Kvedaravičius as a man who was just like that. He really deserves the Golden Swan. He valued life and always spoke out against what was life-threatening in his view, and that was a very attentive view, Zelensky added. When he was killed, Kvedaravičius was still in the process of making his film Mariupolis II, a documentary depicting life in the besieged city in the wake of the Russian invasion. The film, finished by his Ukrainian partner Hanna Bilobrova, was screened at the prestigious Cannes Film Festival on May 19 and 20. In his Sunday remarks, Zelensky called on guests and participants of the Svyatobryan Festival to be just as attentive and support life. And remember Ukraine, Mariupol, and the fact that this war that took Manta's life. Russia's war against Ukraine must end. And as soon as possible, he stressed. The Film Awards Festival is held annually under the patronage of Prime Minister of the Republic of Lithuania Ingrida Šimonytė and broadcast live on Lithuanian national television. Putin blames the West for international food and energy crisis. Russian President Vladimir Putin reiterated that Moscow's actions have nothing to do with the looming energy and food crisis in the world and again blamed economic and financial policies of the West for creating such a scenario. Current and former energy officials tell CNN they worry that Russia's invasion of Ukraine in the wake of years of underinvestment in the energy sector have sent the world careening into a crisis that will rival, or even exceed, the oil crises of the 1970s and early 1980s. U.S. President Joe Biden has blamed Russia's invasion for domestic price hikes and global food supply shortages. In an interview with state TV channel Rossiya 1, conducted Friday and aired in full Sunday, the Russian leader blamed the United States for injecting large sums of money into its economy as a means of combating the consequences of the coronavirus pandemic, which led to inflation and an unfavorable situation in the food market, because first of all, food prices went up. Putin also blamed the short-sighted policy of European countries, and above all the European Commission, in the energy sector as another reason for the crisis in food and energy market. Among other things, the Europeans did not listen to our urgent requests to preserve long-term contracts for the supply of the same natural gas to European countries, and they also began to terminate the contracts. This had a negative impact on the European energy market, prices crept up. Russia has absolutely nothing to do with it, he said. As soon as gas prices went up, fertilizer prices immediately increased, because some of these fertilizers are produced, including at the expense of gas. Everything is interconnected, Putin added. But we warned about this, and this has nothing to do with any military operation of Russia, Putin said. The Kremlin said last week that Moscow is ready to make a significant contribution to avoid the food crisis through the export of grain and fertilizers, if the West lifts politically motivated restrictions on Russia. Zelensky meets with soldiers and displaced Ukrainians during trip to Zaporizhzhia region. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met with soldiers on the front line and internally displaced Ukrainians during a trip to Zaporizhzhia region on Sunday. Zelensky visited the frontline positions of the Ukrainian military, taking the opportunity to acquaint himself with the operational situation on the front line of defense, a statement from the Ukrainian presidency said. The president spoke with the soldiers, presenting them with state awards and thanking them for their service, according to the statement. I want to thank you for your great work, for your service, for protecting all of us, our state. I am grateful to everyone. I want to wish you and your families good health. Take care of yourselves, Zelensky told the frontline soldiers. He also paid a trip to a sanatorium where internally displaced Ukrainians, forced to flee their homes, have been receiving shelter and medical care, according to a separate statement from the Ukrainian presidency. Some more context. Almost 12 million Ukrainians have been internally displaced by Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Zelensky told lawmakers in Luxembourg on Thursday. I understand that everyone wants to return home. And this housing, no matter how comfortable it is, cannot be compared with your own home. There is nowhere better than home, Zelensky told the IDPs on Sunday. IDPs who had traveled from the southern city of Mariupol recounted to the president the tragic events they had to endure due to the Russian invasion, appealing to him for help with recovering lost documents and issuing death certificates of relatives who died in the temporarily occupied territories, according to the statement. Zelensky invited them to put forward suggestions for legislative changes that could be made to simplify the procedures for obtaining these documents. He assured the IDPs that all those who have lost their homes will be provided with comfortable housing, according to the statement. Finally, Zelensky gave a gift to 8-year-old boy, Yehor Krevtsov, who kept a diary while living under shelling in Mariupol. Yehor, whose Mariupol diary writings were published on social networks, shared his experiences of the city's bombing with Zelensky. Ukraine claims it controls half of Severodonetsk. Serhiy Haidai, the head of the Luhansk Region Military Administration, says there is good news from the city of Severodonetsk, which has been under Russian bombardment for weeks. In a post on his Telegram channel, Haidai says, "Our armed forces have cleared up half of the city. Half of the city is really controlled by our defenders." Last week, Haidai said that Russian forces held about 80% of Severodonetsk, but Ukrainian forces have clawed back parts of the city in street fighting since then. Haidai says he expects Russian forces to redouble their efforts to take the city in the next few days by using heavy artillery. They have no other tactics, he said. They cannot fight in another way. Haidai said there are approximately 15,000 civilians still in Severodonetsk. Now evacuation is impossible because of constant fighting, he said. Even though we officially stopped the evacuation, today, we managed to evacuate 98 people from Lysychansk together with the help of volunteers, the State Emergency Service and the National Police, he said. Lysychansk is across the Siversky Donets River from Severodonetsk and is heavily defended by Ukrainian troops. Wales ends Ukraine's improbable run to clinch first World Cup berth in 64 years. Wales men's soccer team defeated Ukraine 1-0 on Sunday to secure a berth in the 2022 FIFA World Cup. Ukraine thought they had begun the game in perfect fashion as Oleksandr Zinchenko took a free kick quickly after 3 minutes and found the back of the net, only for Spanish referee Antonio Mateo to disallow the goal as the Manchester City player took the set piece before the whistle was blown. Ukraine continued to dominate the early exchanges but were unable to capitalize, with Welsh goalkeeper Wayne Hennessy making a string of excellent saves. In the 34th minute, Gareth Bale's free kick deflected off the head of Andrei Yarmolenko and into the goal to give Rob Page's team the lead, which they took into the half-time break. Both teams had good chances in the second half, Aaron Ramsey missing for Wales and Roman Yaremchuk for the visitors. In the end, one goal was enough for Wales to seal their spot at the forthcoming tournament. As had been the case in Ukraine's semi-final victory against Scotland last Wednesday, the build-up to the match was an emotional affair. Players and fans again sang the national anthem pridefully in unison as yellow and blue flags dominated the Cardiff City Stadium in Wales. The Welsh FA handed out 100 tickets to Ukrainian refugees living in the area before the match as a gesture of solidarity. Ukraine manager Oleksandr Petrakov revealed on Saturday that the team had received a flag from their home country which they had hung in the dressing room. The World Cup playoff final was due to be played in March but was postponed due to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Wales qualified for the match by defeating Austria 2-1 on March 24. Wales will join England, the United States and Iran in Group B. It is only the second time the nation from the British Isles has qualified for the World Cup, and the first since 1958. The 2022 FIFA World Cup takes place in Qatar from November 21 to December 18. Mayor's aid, shortage of drinking water in Mariupol critical. The shortage of drinking water in Mariupol is now at a critical level, according to an advisor to the mayor. Petro Andrushenko said people had to register to receive drinking water and can only get it every 2 days. The damage to Mariupol during more than 2 months of bombardment was so severe that most basic services, such as electricity, gas and piped water, are yet to be restored by the Russian-backed local authorities. Andrushenko said, "The amount of water was small before, but now it has decreased altogether. It is necessary to register in the queue. In the future, the temperature will rise, the water level will fall, and the water will be less." Andrushenko, who is not in Mariupol, claimed that the water being provided by the occupying authorities is very conditional drinking water. Without boiling, it cannot be consumed in normal life at all, and there is no place to boil, that is, only on the outside fire. In fact, people use it as it is. This is a double threat at once. Andrushenko repeated his warnings of epidemics due to the high level of garbage and the number of corpses buried in shallow graves throughout the city. "It is difficult to say what kind of epidemic," he said. "We expect cholera, or any viral epidemic related to the gastrointestinal tract. As a result of unsanitary conditions, this can happen. The worst thing is that such a basic thing as dysentery in the current conditions and with a dysfunctional medical system, lack of drugs, lack of laboratories and everything we are used to, lack of vaccines in Mariupol. Even dysentery can kill tens of thousands. So far there have been no confirmed reports of dysentery or other epidemic diseases in Mariupol." It's Sunday evening in Kyiv. Here's what you need to know. Russian President Vladimir Putin warned on Sunday that Moscow would strike new targets if the US supplied long-range missiles to Ukraine, according to Russian state media. Delivering new arms to Kyiv only aims to drag out the armed conflict for as long as possible, Putin said in an interview to Rossiya 1 TV channel, Russian state media TASS reported. In the case of deliveries of long-range missiles to Kyiv, Russia will draw appropriate conclusions and strike those facilities that it has not yet targeted, he said. If they are supplied, we will draw appropriate conclusions from this and use our own weapons, of which we have enough, in order to strike at those facilities we are not targeting yet, Putin said, commenting on the situation regarding the supply of American multiple launch rocket systems, MLRS, to Ukraine. Here are more of the latest headlines from the Russia-Ukraine war: The state of fighting in the Donetsk region. As Russia intensifies its assault on the eastern part of Ukraine, the Ukrainian military has claimed that Russian troops are making little progress, particularly in the Donetsk region. Russia's air activity remains high over eastern Ukraine and has contributed to Russia's recent tactical successes, but has failed to have a meaningful impact on the conflict, the latest intelligence assessment from the UK's Defence Ministry said on Saturday. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said this week that 1/5 of the country's territory is under Russian control, with the Donbas area almost entirely destroyed. Ukrainian military says Russia launched 5 cruise missiles toward Kyiv. Russia launched 5 X-22 cruise missiles from the Caspian Sea in the direction of Kyiv at 6 a.m. local time on Sunday, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine said. 1 missile was destroyed by Ukraine's air defense unit, and the rest hit infrastructure facilities in the north of the Ukrainian capital, the military said. Earlier, Vadim Denisenko, advisor to the Minister of Internal Affairs of Ukraine, said 1 military target and 1 civilian target were hit. Ukraine shot down 4 missiles aimed at Mykolaiv in southern Ukraine, officials say. Ukrainian air defenses shot down 4 Russian missiles aimed at Mykolaiv in southern Ukraine, an update from Operational Command South said on Sunday. During a night attack from the sea by missiles across the south of Ukraine, 2 missiles were shot down by forces of our divisions over the sea, on approach to the Mykolaiv region, the statement said. At dawn, the Mykolaiv region was again subjected to a massive missile strike using aircraft and 2 missiles were shot down by air defenses, the statement said. Russia says it destroyed tanks in Kyiv. Russian missiles destroyed T-72 tanks and other armored vehicles near Kyiv that had been supplied by Eastern European countries to Ukraine, Russia's defense ministry said Sunday. The ministry added that Russian aerospace forces used high-precision long-range air-launched missiles in the strikes on the capital's outskirts, hitting buildings of a car repair enterprise. The Russian announcement comes after multiple explosions rocked Kyiv on Sunday morning, in the first strikes on the capital in weeks. Kyiv Mayor Vitaly Klitschko said one person has been hospitalized. UK Ministry of Defense: Ukrainian counterattacks in Severodonetsk are likely blunting Russian momentum. Ukrainian counterattacks over the past 24 hours in Severodonetsk are likely blunting Russian momentum, the UK Ministry of Defense said in an intelligence update on Sunday. Ukrainian forces have counterattacked in the contested city of Severodonetsk in eastern Ukraine, likely blunting the operational momentum Russian forces previously gained through concentrating combat units and firepower, the ministry said. The ministry said the Russian troops include personnel mobilized from the reserve of the Russian-led separatist forces of the self-declared Luhansk People's Republic.